for the Board of Finance is now in session. I'd like to adjourn this meeting from this room. We're going to be moving from conference room to room D down the hallway. Thank you. We'll see everybody in a minute. Hold on.
Gene, what did they change rooms?
I just texted. I was unaware of that. So I don't know. It's just me.
It's you and me, huh?
We'll decide on the budget.
We're right down the street from each other.
I know, we could have done it.
Different.
I've been so sick. I didn't want to cough on people.
Oh no, you all right?
I am. It's not COVID. I tested like 1,000,000 times. So I don't
Oh,
know if
wow.
it's just a bad cold. We were in Nashville for a week.
Yeah.
So it's probably, the plane and the crowd.
I have started the recording.
All right. So the Board of
There you
Finance.
are.
We see you.
Good. Board of Finance budget session, which was moved from the in session at 5:37 on Tuesday, March 5th. Thanks to all the board members being here. We have Gene and Bob that are there via Zoom. We appreciate your time. I'm gonna ask Stacy just to run through the changes, and for the newer
I guess we can.
BOF members, basically,
I didn't.
I'm not gonna go through line item by line item.
It's actually going through that camera.
If you have something you want to bring up, just bring it up, or we'll go that way, right? This is just the first of several meetings, so we don't have to get everything done tonight. Pick it up.
Yeah, I'll close this one.
Do we know?
Jeannie, you should mute yourself.
Yeah, Jane.
Good?
All right.
Okay.
Stacy, you mind just walking us through?
Sure. I think we're good, Jim.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
So last night I sent out a summary of walking us through your first document, which was the town requested budget, walking you to the Board of Selectmen recommended budget. I passed out hard copies in the room. Bob and Jean, do you have yours?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Because I thought maybe we could start there so I can kind of tell you what was done and then we can move forward from there. So the top half, where you see we're talking about operating budget only, you see an increase or a change of 4.20%. That was in your original document. That was the original requested budget. Since then, the Board of Selectmen made the following changes, and I'll walk you through them. There is a reduction of I'm going to walk you through to get to the new version that you received on Friday when we sent out the budget document. Those in the room, this blue book got for some getting copies. Okay, so we started out with a budget of 26,820,105 for operating. The first adjustment that was recommended by the Board of Selectmen were salary adjustments of $167,000. That's a catch-all of a bunch of movement of current staff only. It does not include any additional staffing that was in the additional budget request. So there's some movement within, it's not finalized. So as we get closer, I'm sure you'll get details, but the hopes are, or the plan is that there will be savings in existing staffing positions of $167,000.
I know you said that's movement, Stacy. Is it changing of responsibilities, or is that something you can't go into?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, Jean. And I
Okay.
think that when the plan is finalized, it crosses over many departments
Okay.
for the town budget. But I think once it's finalized, then you'll be able to see the moving pieces. But it is across different departments for different reasons. Okay, so the next item, the $38,000 for the fire pension, this is the result of getting the actuarial numbers for the annual determined contribution after the first document was printed. So what was in your original book was shy $38,000, so we had to add that back. And this was based on the fire, it was for the fire pension. It was based on the changes that we made to the fire pension. You'll all remember we increased $1 million and then another 200,000. Even after that, we had to increase the contribution by $38,000.
And so what does that bring the total contribution to? Do you know?
It would be in,
For this year, 1,230,000.
you know it?
No,
No.
Well, that was last year.
195 the year before, then we did 100 and 200.
Oh, I thought you meant the annual contribution in the budget.
Yeah,
In the budget, it is on page 28.
You do this, I don't think it's gonna be much.
It's 113. Yeah, plus, good point, John. So the original was 117 plus 38,000, and before we go to page 28, to John's point, we found out through the Board of Selectmen, my office was asked, how can we phase in this impact rather than having the budget go up so much? And what we did was we identified us, if we do a special appropriation for $100,000 and set aside this $100,000, we can phase in the impact on the annual budgets for 3 years. For year one, it would be this 45,000, so we'll reduce the budget by 45,000. And then year 2 and 3, it'll be 30,000 and 25,000. So it will help the year over year budget. But you will see a request of $100,000 special appropriation in order to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the net effect, you're gonna lower the contribution that we put in because you're putting 100,000 out over 3 years.
Correct. So the budget would be going up, but by offsetting it by this $45,000, it will basically be flat for this upcoming budget.
So the $100,000 that we're setting aside, where are we setting that aside?
It will be an assigned fund balance, so it's not going into a reserve fund, it'll be a piece of fund balance, but it will be assigned for fire pension. We did this last year for 134, you may remember. We did it the same way, and that's why we didn't have a big impact this year. But by doing the 100,000, it will offset the budget for the next 3 years. 45 of which is in this upcoming budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. All right, the next item, the self-insurance reserve fund. This fund, every year, we budget $50,000. We put it in a reserve fund. This is for deductibles. If a car, we get, a car gets ruined or we have a water leak somewhere and we have a deductible. This is a reserve fund that we set up many years ago, and every year we funded it for $50,000. We decided to reduce it. The balance is pretty healthy right now. It has $82,000 in there. So we said, let's reduce it a little bit. If we have to pick up in future years, we can, but it helped this year's budget. Health benefit adjustments. This was some changes that were made in our health plan, and it had to do with annual in lieu of benefits for employees who are not in the plan. So there were some savings adjustments made there. So that gave us a $28,000 savings. The next item, the holiday observance. This is the lighting for downtown. You all know that how expensive, how that number grew. We used ARPA funds last year for it. The thought was, let's use ARPA funds again. So you'll see a request to use ARPA funds for that $26,000. And then we need to develop a plan for this 1 year. The Board of Selectmen is planning to come to the Board of Finance to ask to use ARPA funds for that. So that will review the budget. Employment services, this is really unemployment. It has been built up over the years based on history. We found that we can reduce that amount substantially. 27,000. Water savings. We originally got a request from Connecticut Water to increase the budget 18%. That 18% we later found out was for everything other than fire hydrants. And that was our big number. So that increase of 91,000 pretty much goes away. That was a huge, we got that, yeah, that was great. Contingency. So this goes to two concepts that I think we want to talk about tonight. Contingency we have in the budget right now is a line item. Historically, it was at $100,000. It went down to about 70,000 a few years ago. Last year, you all dropped it down to 30,000. This contingency is for non-repetitive expenditures. So it's always been there. The big difference this year going forward is the charter. Before we did the charter, contingency was used for special appropriations. So you'll probably remember if we came to you with a special appropriation, we would say, John, do we want to do it through contingency or fund balance? And you would pick, and we had a $30,000 pot. In the new charter, special appropriations no longer come out of contingency, so we could spend it like any line item. So these one-offs, we're thinking this would be a great way to do these one-time peaks in the registrars for the early voting, those types of things, not assigning the money to individual departments, but if these items come up, operating items, we have this bucket to use.
And the difference being if it's in their budget, they can spend it. If it's in
And
contingency, they have to
reallocate.
come before the board of finance.
So so currently there's 30,000 in there. This would increase it to 40. We also reallocated 2 other small accounts to bring that account up to 50. So if we add this 10 and reallocate those accounts, you'll have 50,000 annually that we could spend on these one-time items. This is not capital. This is operating items that are one-time, so we don't have to build up an individual department. There's been a lot of thought about all the signs for the PD, for the equipment. So the thought was to add some maintenance for those signs. I believe we're gonna need it, so the board decided to add 5,000 for that. And then finally, after the budget came in and everything was pulled together, we did a really we looked at everything together, and Peggy asked all departments to go back and look at your department and try to find the 1% increase. So the total of all the reductions are little items from every department, everybody pretty much gave a little bit that added up to $96,000. So that was good. Yeah.
Question on the equipment maintenance, does the police department have a plan and cycle maintenance account?
They don't have a plan and cycle maintenance. The plan and cycle maintenance is really for facilities type things that is managed by facilities. They have a maintenance account, but these signs were never considered part of it. They use it for maintenance for other. They have,
Will this go into that account
yes,
or? a
it's
new
not
account?
a new account.
Okay.
It's just bumping it up for new equipment that they've had. So in total, before additional budget requests, the reduction of 448,000 is being applied. Then they went through the additional budget. Yep.
Okay, so in Peggy's letter with the budget on February 29th, you identified 404,000. And I'm just trying to see that.
This is the exact
Yeah,
number.
they took a mistake.
Yeah.
The 404.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all it was, June's.
Yeah.
That's actually.
She just wanted you to pick up on it.
I thought you had more than this.
Okay. And then, so the additional budget requests, I mean, it's up to you if you want me to walk through what they did. It is in your book that you received on Friday. It's in the additional budget requests section. Each item was discussed and they decided some of them, and I know Peggy talked about it out length, there's other ideas on how to fund them. And some of them just weren't supported by the Board of Selectmen. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions on the additional budget.
It would be
requests.
helpful to me if you
Walk
went
through.
them, please.
Yeah, but just for this for this meeting, I'd like to stay on the expense side, and then the next meeting we go to the revenue side. So if they want to, that's what I'd like.
Okay, sorry, then
Back
it's
and
not
forth.
appropriate.
No, it is definitely appropriate. It's an expense.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so the first item on page 31 of your book is Beach and Rec, the quarter of superintendent for the Academy Community Center. We decided to put that off. We don't know exactly when they're going to open, and then we can talk about it for the next budget going forward. So that was not supported by the Board of Selectmen. The communication dispatch, these were a bunch of small little items that were requested, small capital items. The thought is, and there's more than these items that would apply to this, but the thought was we are going to, or the Board of Selectmen will be requesting that we create a project within the CNRE fund called small equipment purchases. So there'll be a little bucket, kind of like furniture or security. There'll be an amount in there. To set that one project up, since it didn't go through the committee, the thought was to ask the Board of Selectmen, to ask Board of Finance to do a special appropriation for that same amount, put it into CIP, and then identify this one line item for small pieces of equipment. So this way, these one-offs, tasers, something comes up, you have this amount, it's a project now in CIP. Next year, you can choose to fund it and build up that balance, or fund it at a lower level, but that will be a line item where these small items will get funded and it will be part of CIP.
What is the process of creating a new fund?
It's not a new fund, it's going to be part of CNRE. It's just like a project in the
Okay.
CNRE. So,
But and the contingency fund is not adding a new fund either. That
no,
already
that's a
exists.
line
Okay,
item in the operating, and then this would be a line item in the CNRE fund.
Gotcha.
And it's very similar to the security and the furniture in the CNRE fund.
Mhm.
We fund it at what, $75,000 a year, it builds up. And in any given year, you could say, oh no, the balance is too high now, let's not fund it, but it will be part of the CIP process.
Sure.
And in order to establish this project within CNRE, the thought was you all, the two boards, will also do a special appropriation into there. So it won't have any impact on your CIP that was submitted, but it'll be up and running and started, and then you can, going forward, you can fund it more or less. And this is where these small items could be paid for annually.
And so that's what you mean by new CIPC.
CNRE
But
project.
it hasn't been- we don't have it yet, we're going to be creating.
And it really, it's not creating a new fund, it's nothing
Really a description.
of a right, you know how we have the different projects in the CNRE,
Mhm.
furniture, security, downtown, this will be aligned. It'll be aligned within CNRE, and I don't know, they didn't fine tune the numbers, but let's say they say, let's put 100 in that project. The request will also be a special appropriation of 100, and then moving forward, it will be part of the CIP.
So they
process.
did support this.
Yes.
Support this.
So that's where those communication items would come from. The next item, the fire marshal, he had originally asked for this inventory module through ARPA. I think he was given $10,000 originally. It wasn't spent, so we went through and said, you know what, Sam, you didn't spend it, we're taking the money back, so we no longer have the money. So it went back to the ARPA master account. Now he's ready. So we thought it was an appropriate place to take the money out of ARPA rather than building it into the budget at this point in time. You will be seeing a request, I think it's going on Board of Selectmen next week, for $9,015 for 2 years of
So
this.
say, how much time you have to spend our money, is it?
We have to commit by December of 24, but spend it by December of 26.
What do we have left?
Right now, we have about
Gives what back, right?
130,000.
we have 180.
Oh.
There is a pending light request for youth soccer of 130, which left us $50,000 as of right now.
Oh, so that doesn't include what,
This would come out of that.
and we're already up to,
So we really have 40 left.
If we take
If
this
we
down.
approve this.
Yes.
but if
And
you
then-
add the 26.
And the
from that,
26 as well.
So, yeah, So it really makes, that's not helpful.
For the, well,
It's not the.
We're not there yet,
Yeah.
sorry.
and just so you know, the board, a future Board of Selectmen meeting, we will be going through all of the ARPA balances again. We've done it a few times saying, this has been spent, or is this project done, can we return this? Now we're in crunch time, to your point, we need to commit by December.
I
So
think we
we're,
have to go through it like you're gonna.
you either spend it, commit it, or it's
Or
coming
come
back and we'll reallocate it. So there are some projects, there's Sherry Cody's position, our EDC director, she left, that was funded through ARPA, so that money's coming back. I just don't know those dollars yet, but there will be some unused monies that'll come back that we can reallocate for ARPA dollars. Okay, health department. So this is a request. We've talked about this over the last few years. We actually got rid of the hazardous waste program that we did in town. We also run it through New Haven where people can bring their stuff there. This would bring back the one in town so that people can bring that one day of hazardous waste. It costs $15,000. The thought was we have the NIP revenue, our revenue that we get from NIPs, little NIPs.
Oh, the bottles?
Yes,
Yes.
the towns get money back.
Oh.
Yeah, so we have about
Whatever we recycle.
15,000 in there right now. So the thought is, let's use it. We have to use it out environmentally.
I was just gonna say, I know there's strings attached. to it.
There are,
Yeah.
yeah. So environmental, we've used it for greenup cleanup to rent for water bottles or for dumpsters.
just want to point out, I did a cleanup day and we were picking up mainly nip bottles.
See, there you go. Help
So
out.
see, it's a full circle.
Yeah.
You get a portion of it.
Get a nickel for each one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now we can do this hazardous waste day in town. So that is not built into the budget.
I think it's now.
Not.
No, because you're gonna.
Okay.
So this was
So
a
if you
no.
look to the right, the second column in, that's what makes up the 160. So now we're coming to the first item that is built into the Board of Selectmen's budget. And this is for the library. So the library they came in at a pretty big ask. The thought was, since the goal for the town operating budget was around 3%, why don't we give the outside agencies around 3%? So the overall, their operating budget, 3% of that was the 43,000. In addition to that, because we also build in maintenance contracts, we have no say in that. So in the town operating budget, any maintenance contracts that go up, we pretty much let go. So we also gave them the 14,000. So the 14 and the 43 was added back for the library, or added to the library.
Oh, I just have the 43.
Yeah, it's that whole column is what makes up the 160.
Okay.
The next two are Madison Hose and Nomad, the fire departments. Again, they asked for a certain number. We took their total operating and gave them 3% to be consistent. Police services, they did include the hiring of one officer to start January 1st. And that includes onboarding costs. So it's not only the salary, it's also the training and the uniforms. And the other two items, the radar speed signs and the tasers, the thought is we would use that one-time small equipment fund for that. So once we create it, we put the money in CIP and the CNRE, now we'll have that balance, and these are the types of items that would be paid out of that account.
So, but if that account only has 50,
That's much one for the 100.
so there'll be 100 in there that will cover these two expenses.
Yeah, those two, and then the dispatch communications up top as well.
And is there a reason? I mean, we originally funded 6 of the solar lights or speed signs. And now this is another 6. Is there a reason why they weren't put in together? And if have we found that there has been a benefit to the police department from having them at all?
Sure, I would say, I mean, that's really not a question I can
Right.
answer. If we want to get, you know, that.
That's my
refund.
frustration is that it's split up to two, so it can't go through capital. If it was all of them in one chunk, then it would have gone through CIP, correct?
Not necessarily. I mean, if you divide the 31 by 6, you know, we're saying that each one is only $5,000. So not necessarily would it be its own project within CIP. I can't answer the question about those signs that we purchased before versus these signs. But I do want to highlight that the support in Peggy's or the Board of Selectmen's proposal was doing 3 and not 6 of these signs. So when you see the request out of that fund, it will be 3.
So does that half this 31?
Yes. It's half of it.
Like something was recommended, but nothing was put in right now.
Right. So that will be agenda items later on. It will come to both boards and you all can discuss it then, but at this
Not in
point in
this
time,
budget.
it's not in the budget.
And they didn't put how many they're gonna recommend in their top.
I think in her presentation she did. Yeah, I think in the presentation, I'm not sure in the letter if she did or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
About how many that they were gonna recommend.
Three, is what she said.
3.
So
in
they
the
asked
presentation,
For
yeah,
1049 and the Board of Selectmen approved 55.
for the budget, yes.
Good.
Okay, Public Works. The equipment repairs, equipment's getting older. John always uses this account. He's been short. He's had a struggle and do line item transfers for it. So he asked for an $8,000. What was done was 3% on the actual account balance to be consistent with the other requests. So that's where the 3,700 comes from.
So we always ask them to go back to their budget, find it somewhere else, and we'll transfer.
Normally if he's short in an account,
Yeah,
he sees he has a negative and he brings a line transfer to you guys. You don't
Right.
even, yeah.
and he's never had any problems doing it.
I think, you know, I can't.
Or it's
speak-
getting to the point where it's not absorbable and the Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen took the position that we're adding 3,700 back in.
Yeah, or maybe something else wasn't done because he needed to do that, you know, I can't
Yeah.
really speak to, you know, historical line transfers, but.
Okay,
And then the other item is highway overtime. This number has gotten higher over the years. We're doing many more outside events, town planned events that they have to be part of, emergencies. We've never increased it with COLA increases. This account was really far behind, again, where he's been, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing. So this item was supported.
in its entirety.
Yes.
What is the overtime in his budget? We better not just put it in there. I know it's an additional budget request, but just because it's an additional budget request, so what did he ask for overtime in his operating?
So in the operating budget right now, it's showing flat, but it will be increased by the
17,500.
Okay, and then the registrars, I know you guys have heard at length all of this. They did ask for 34,000 net of a $10,000 grant. The Board of Selectmen thought, let's give them 10,000 in their budget that they can work with, knowing that this contingency operating item will now be at $50,000. While we're still trying to figure out this early voting and what the impact would be, we could draw upon the contingency for now and then figure it out going forward. Senior services, the other items were not supported by the Board of Selectmen. And then,
I'm firmly the bottom of the page recommended using things once, so you know.
yeah. Going to
Yes, they
page,
did- They did accept,
what's
Wait.
that?
they did accept that one.
No, it's not in that column.
No, they're just recommending, they didn't accept it in.
They're saying if we need it, we need to do it, we have that contingency line item now. Page 35, youth and family. This has been something that Scott Cochran has been asking for many years. It was funded through ARPA. ARPA is going away. He would now like it part of the general fund budget. So this would make that position from part-time to full-time.
So can I just say one thing about that position? I'm
Go ahead.
struggling. Thanks, babe. I'm struggling with this position. You know, when people use the ARPA funds for salaries, we were clear that doesn't mean that they get it after. So I'm a little concerned that, you know, and I know we got the email from Scott that said, we're hoping to get a grant. We don't know if we've got the grant. So I'm assuming this is the same position that he emailed us about, correct, Stacy?
Yes.
Okay. So that's something I want to talk about. We don't have to do it right now, but I'd like to talk about that. Because I'm not 100% in favor of that.
But that's what happens when you use grants for a position, eventually you own them, and that's the history, but. Obviously, let's let Stacy finish, we're gonna come back on the
Yep.
defense.
I'm just making an asterisk.
I like it. Thanks for jumping in.
And then, so that's pretty much the operating amount that comes to 160, back to this summary page. Then we get down to capital and debt. Capital is pretty much what we put into CIP annually. This year, we are looking to increase it by $274,000. This was recommended by the CIP committee. It's a result of the Madison investment plan. It is the last year that we're building up funding into CIP, knowing that debt next year will be going up and we will be able to reduce this number next year. But the thought was to build up CIP, build up the base. Next year, we could reduce CIP as the debt comes on and it will not have a huge budget impact.
And the total for CIP you're requesting is 274,800.
That's the additional over the 5158, yes. On this page,
Capital.
She's got that. Okay.
So basically asking for 5% more.
And Board of Selectmen did approve that,
yes,
the 5%.
the increase there. And then the last item, the debt service, we do have a little bit of debt coming on. We issued in December, so we do have some bonds in there. Offset in the annual debt service is actually a premium that we received when we sold the bonds. We are able to legally put that in a debt service fund and offset future debt service. So that number would be higher if we did not do that, and that is offset by over $400,000. And the plan is to do that over the next 3 years as well, to smooth in the debt impact. There's a whole plan.
There's a plan.
Okay, so that brings down the town recommended budget by the Board of Selectmen to $33,964,100 or 4.21%. On the bottom of the sheet is the Board of Ed. We did break it down by operating and debt service. After we combine it all, the total budget of $97,849,256 or a total budget of 3.69%.
So that's the overview of what changes were made by the BOS and what was requested, and everybody here saw the presentation. Like I said, for tonight, I'd like to stay on the expense side, and our next meeting we'll go to the revenue side, and there's some adjustments that were suggested and made, and I think the Board of Selectmen made some suggestions to us. So I first of all, Stacy, thanks going through that
Yes,
line by
I
line.
appreciate
That's
it.
nice.
Thank
If there's
you.
anything that anybody on this board wants to go through, feel free to jump in or help in. Right now, I'm just gonna ask if anybody wants, I know Gene wants to talk about that position, but if there's anything else on the expense side, which means the removal of expense or in addition, I guess, to the position which would add an expense, anything like that. I'll open it up to the board.
I have a question on the 1% requested. Obviously, it didn't total 1%. where was it found and
You're talking about the 1% that was requested by the department heads, John?
by the Board of Select, 96,960.
Got it. So that was the 1% that they went to the departments and asked them to cut. That your,
Yes.
the 96,960.
So
your
not
question
every
is where-
department hit the 1%.
Not every department did. I mean, there are
Yeah.
departments that are so small.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, I have a list of what comes up in 96, but for example, the tax collector's budget is so little, she found $400 in office supplies. So, you go from that to,
Yeah, but
Public Works looked at various,
Yeah.
accounts and tried to find savings wherever they could, which amounted to 24,000. I mean, by departments, it really, and not every department could do it, to be honest, but they tried, and pretty much everybody offered something.
Something, yeah.
Something. We offered postage for mine.
Well done.
we didn't ask them to finance.
No,
Yeah,
I'm making a
you don't
print
go
for
there,
myself.
right?
And 1% would have been about $250,000.
Yeah, 260 if you want to.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
And then part of it, and I don't wanna go into detail, but part of it was also
Well, the health
included in the
insurance, too.
staffing adjustments, so it was kind of over in that.
well, you have certain things, I mean, I guess you can just cut the health insurance self-funded, but they wouldn't do that and your reserve funds and all. But yeah, John's right, we do about, 260, 250, I'm 1%. But it's still 100,000, 96.
It wasn't easy.
So I'll open a couple things up for discussion. The first, I did speak with Chief Drum this morning. He did call me. I know there's a position going on in January. He appreciated the letter that was sent by the Board of Selectmen. He would like to see a position in the budget for fiscal, 26, so the end of June. In my previous life, I've done this where you put it in June because that has a minimal impact. My discussion with the chief, and I'm sure some people will agree, disagree, is you have vacant positions. Until those positions are filled, he said, I agree, John, I don't want to hire people. It takes a while to actually get somebody in there. So I'm okay with us doing something or even putting some of the money, even if it's just the June of 25 into contingency for a police officer. If they go that route and they need it, we can put it in there. I'm open to this up for discussion. Again, and the letter that was sent by the Board of Selectmen is nice, but it's really not binding other than they gave their word. So that's up for discussion in terms of what to do. But if you put in 1 month, if they don't fill the position, to me, it's a minimal impact on the budget. If they do fill the position, you have the opportunity to they can get started a little bit ahead if they fill the other positions. Go to.
Okay, I raised my hand as you were saying it, if they fill the other positions. They have to fill those other positions first, right?
I want to be clear, this is where there's some ambiguity. If we put it in the budget, listen, I have to fill that business first anyways, let's not kid ourselves, because you're hiring one of them, right? But if we put in contingency with the sole purpose, for that, we make that, line item, then yes, we would have control if they didn't put the position, not put the money in. So it gives you a little more, I want to use the word control, leverage, thank you,
Yeah.
if you put in contingency. Matt?
So just so I'm clear, so I believe they have 3 vacancies right now.
Correct.
We are putting in another
In
position,
January 25, that is correct.
so you're talking about the second additional position.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay,
And again, I'm not the police chief, we had a conversation, he said, John, I don't wanna have the most, but I need more. But, obviously we'll move on, but I think we've all said the same thing, one way or the other. I said it to Commissioner Chairman Donlin that night, that when you fill the other positions, you can come back to us. But then there's more of a commitment if we put it in the budget or put in contingency than just saying, hey, I can say it all I want, hey, I'm
right,
good.
come back, yeah.
I'm completely in support of that, John. It's no secret that the solar battery powered, speed signs, especially given that it's not just the 31.7, but then the additional 5 for maintenance and things. I know it's minuscule in comparison to a new position year over year, but if we're looking for some savings from doing that, that would be my recommendation.
Any I don't want to open by spending more money, but I do think it's something that we may or may not be using. 2
Yeah,
years from now.
I'm in agreement with that as well too. I mean, they've got the 3 vacancies with another position. If they're able to fill, and if those conditions are met,
I know it's coming,
it's
so.
good, yeah.
Gene or Bob, John, I don't know if you want to say that, go for the.
Well,
As long
probably
as,
another month, a month in for that second position,
For 1 month, correct.
right?
At the end.
Just to say that we funded the position.
Right, and it could go to contingency, but we'd have to be clear that it's for that position, Phil, once Phil, go ahead,
Yeah.
Gene.
I mean, as long as we're very clear, they have to fill those other positions. You know. When was the last time we did 2 police officers in 1 year?
You have a little more experience here than I do, Gene. So
Yeah, Jean, didn't we do that like back in 2017, maybe?
That's what I was thinking, Jude. It probably was 17, right? Okay.
I think.
And is there a discussion when you talk to Jack about then what happens in the next budget? They get this one and they're gonna continue to ask for more? I'm just curious.
so to this, and again, I'm not gonna speak for the chief, but his thing was, you know, at that point, I reevaluate where we are, but he feels he needs a couple more officers. Does, in addition to the 3 vacancies, but listen, I don't know, he may come back every year and ask for 1 or 2 more, I don't know, it's up to the board of selectmen us to say yes or no, but. I don't wanna make this into an open, you can get whatever you want, that's not the case, but. I think it's a question we can ask them before we do anything.
Yeah, we're not, right. We're not doing anything tonight with this, right?
I want to discuss it, right? I
But
know-
not, because I have some,
I didn't
I'd
make it
like,
in the form of a motion to answer your question.
yeah, thank you.
But what I said, Gene, out here, I want to focus on the expense side, and if that is the expense side. If you're adding a new position with more money, it's going to be an expense, right? Or if you're cutting something, you may save money. But I would also have the conversation with the chief, and I would call him before we took any final action about, you know, what's fiscal 26 and 27 look like. He may say, I don't know. He may say, you know, we're going to be good for a while. All right, so for now, I think we're in some sort of agreement on the conversation. We didn't act on it. It wasn't a motion. I just wanted to open it up for discussion. And it wasn't a knock on what the board of selectmen did. I just think it was a little more concrete. Anybody else want to open something up?
You want to talk about those solar powered operated speed signs?
I mean, I've talked about it a lot, so people know how I feel. I don't know if anybody agrees with me. I mean, honestly,
I didn't know Katie had an opinion on those.
yeah, it's me and my lead foot. No, it's, I mean, we did install some already. I have no idea if it's been beneficial in terms of anything, and we just keep adding, so it's not nothing. And so for where I sit, I would like some, you know, we've gotten data on other things, security wise in town, safety. I don't know that where this is coming from and why the need is, why they feel like they need it. And I know you guys can't answer that
Yeah.
for me, but
I've heard Chief Drum say that they've been beneficial, the ones that they have, but I don't know what he bases that on. And I also just wonder, we do have some issues in town that I think officers, getting those positions filled, getting another officer will help address. I'm not sure that this is really going to be addressing the issues we want to be focusing on. And to me, it's more of a want than a need. So.
I mean, we have funded them for other, you know, the cameras, the radar set. I mean, I think there's been a lot of special appropriations that have gone to them. I think I would just like more data on that, as well as a better understanding of the maintenance costs and things like that before we just fund it. That's my singular opinion.
It's not funded right
Not
now.
funded.
Right.
So unless you guys are thinking of adding it back, I do think this conversation is gonna come up again when we ask, you know, to take it from the small.
I agree, and for me, I think they work. I don't know if anybody's driven by, you've seen people automatically slow down. I'll tell you, if they're too often, and I'm not gonna throw myself on the bus, I go to a certain route, my kid goes to school, after a while, you start to.
That's the data I'm looking for, is where are they now? How have they been helpful?
Do you move
How
them
much does
around?
it cost to maintain them? are, you know, all of that stuff, I think, goes into an expense
I
of
do think in the beginning, without question, they were people I see all the time and slow down. And this was, I think, recommended to happen. We are gonna have that discussion again, but I do think they help. I think it's, if they're in the same spot all the time and not moving, I think after a while, people of this, and it's kind of like they're here.
right.
So I do like your idea that we have to have data. I mean, this is the Board of Finance, not accounting, right? So we have to have data on the efficacy of the. Going forward.
That's kind of,
I always put my net bottles away when I see them.
good, that's awesome, but just throw them out the window because it
Yeah.
gives the town money.
I just hear a border plan going with it.
Oh,
Do you
Jack.
know the data is actually available? Has that ever been gotten before? Is that the reason you're asking?
It wasn't gotten the first time we approved that, it was it 3 or 6 we put in first time? We put in 6, feels like there's 6 around town.
Hey,
No, sorry. We do have a website. But no, that we didn't have a presentation on it then. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen did.
but we could ask, but when they're gonna come back before us, if this is not in the budget right now,
It will be a conversation.
it will definitely be a conversation. I'm sure the chief will be here and have a presentation, and
So I will believe it.
so.
But thank you. Chief.
So now that you brought that up, Amy has opinion and Amy, I don't.
Shocking.
I mean, there's a couple things I want to talk about, whether it's the fire pension. I do agree with confusing the 100,000 into that to level that out. I also, think this, I mean, I've been talking about the capital not recurring for a year, and I do think that's something we should bump up. I think things happen, you know, however we decide that. Well,
100% agree. You've been
Yeah.
talking about it for years. We've been talking about it for a century.
all right.
Amen,
Good.
sister.
An agreement there. So those, I mean, those are things to me, and the fire pension helping lowering what we have to, you know, put into the budget the next few years makes sense. Like I said, in the next meeting, we'll get through revenue and our fund balance and a lot of other things.
Could we talk about the Board of Ed?
I was just gonna say that, Gene, that's unbelievable. Go ahead. How did you?
To say I was shell shocked to see those numbers come across is an understatement. I'm just concerned at the amount of spending that's going on over there, and there doesn't seem to be any collaboration and understanding that they are part of a town. We have other vulnerable populations that need money. And I struggle with the amount of the ask.
Do they do zero-based
I
budgeting?
don't disagree
too?
at all.
They do.
Just pass through what
No,
they have
they do.
written.
They roll over and then talk about additional requests. There's some.
I know there was a suggestion by the Board of Selectmen to cut by 200,000. I know the Board of Education would prefer that doesn't happen, which everybody does want. You know, no one really wants their budget cut. But I'm more than okay with that.
I am as well.
with that, I know that there was talk about band uniforms. Are we expecting special appropriations coming through with?
So thanks, Matt, for bringing that up. I want to be clear. I don't think anybody's here or against band or band.
No.
Oh, no, yeah, right.
So I think one of the things we talk about is allowable expense for ARPA. So just to see how much money we have in the ARPA fund. So yes, I do think it'll come back. I think it'll be some sort. I don't want to put it in the budget because the Gene's point, once you put it in the budget, that's the starting point for next year. If you add 100,000, or if we don't cut the budget or something, that's the starting point. And it's not only increase to 3 or 4%, but you started higher. So that's my take. I don't want to put it in the operating budget, but I think, yes, it'll be a special appropriations, or I really think there's discussion about ARPA, how much money we have in ARPA funds to get them paid. And I also think going forward, they should start to plan whether it's 5,000 a year or 10,000 a year or something that's in their budget. And I know they can't, but we can just open up that law where they can. Unlike
They
the
do
town,
it with sports uniforms.
they can't have a revolving fund. They have to give them money
No, the
back.
sports uniforms they can do like.
Or a 10-year cycle,
phases.
yeah.
That's different.
15,000, it's
Correct.
not 90.
Yes.
And they can't buy part band uniforms over
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
They need to buy them all, so they all match, they're all done at once.
Right, but they cannot have a revolving
They
fund.
cannot.
Go ahead, Gene.
There was a meeting that I was at where they're talking about changing the logo? Like, has
Colors.
that been resolved? Cause I don't know why we would buy uniforms and then change.
Have them be obsolete, right?
It's supposed
Yeah.
to be by July, I think. They're
But-
working on it now.
I think we can make that point, whether it's a special appropriations or in the budget or ARPA that, you know, or when are you changing these? Because I don't care what money it is, we shouldn't spend it if we're gonna change it again in 6 months or a year.
No, they were planning on waiting until they made all those changes, but they are an expensive
Yeah,
uniform. It's not like a basketball
and we're
uniform.
very proud of our band and they are fabulous
They
and
are fabulous.
deserving. And I hate anytime that the arts have to get set aside.
That's my hope of what, and I thank Matt, is none of us are against the band or the uniforms or athletics or, but you know, we want to make sure it's done right.
But that's not in here.
That's not.
So if we are seeking to reduce, as you've suggested,
It's not in where.
It's
It
not.
is in the Board of Ed.
it is in the Board of Ed
Yes.
budget.
But
So-
we can't pick and choose, we pick a number.
Right.
We can't say
cannot.
cut.
No, a line
we
item,
can't say
correct.
cut school books, I'm making that up. We can't say cut, you know,
No, we can only
laptop,
give-
we can only give the number.
3/4 of our budget goes to one line, and
That's the state.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
so I think the question is, are we comfortable with 4.43%? Is the way I look at it.
It's a number, right? I don't mean that's not a number, John. It's whatever number this board decides to cut or not cut,
Yeah.
that's all you can do. You can't pick and choose what you want
Right.
to cut it down. So to Katie's point, we can say, don't cut band uniforms, we're gonna cut it, I just use 100,000.
They're their own board of finance.
They're gonna say, well, you
Well,
cut
yes.
band uniforms, I don't
Statute.
care what, right? And that's what happens, so.
Yeah, the finance committee.
Stacy, just a quick question. With Peggy going back to the town and asking each department to reduce, did the Board of Ed reduce anything?
They were not asked to go through that exercise.
Not even by the Board of Selectmen.
I believe not.
You know, again, it's part of the town. They're not their own entity. I know the budgets are separate, but it affects the bottom line and the taxpayers. Seems to me if the Board of Ed if the town went back and you've got small budgets that took $400, you know, whatever out of their accounts, I'd like to see some effort by the Board of Ed to reduce. I mean, Katie, you and I, when we were chairs, we had to look and we had to reduce.
Absolutely.
Plus with the debt coming on and all, you know, I just think of CIP. I mean, the amount that they put in CIP and our committee went through and they wanted it all in the first year and we were able to separate it out. And I believe in that, but I feel like there's no effort on their part to make a plan to phase things in as Katie and I did painfully for years. And I just would like to see more effort on the Board of Ed to be aware of their spending. And I feel like it's just continues to ask and ask and ask. I was completely disappointed by Seth's comment in a meeting that I was at when he said, we're not going to reduce it, let them reduce it. I wasn't aware it was us and them. I was aware that we were one town and that the community pays the taxes that keeps all of us moving forward. And I was completely disappointed that that's the attitude of the Board of Ed chair in a public meeting. So I want to look at that number. I don't know what that looks like. I know there are expenses that cannot be touched. I'm well aware, Katie is well aware of what our role is here, but I do not see any effort by the Board of Ed to focus on being part of a community and being part of a town that has been incredibly generous and supportive of their district, of our district. I don't even say their district, our district. But there doesn't seem to be any reciprocation and concern over the other points of our population or our community or, you know, anything except for what they want, and they don't seem to stop at asking.
Can I ask a question? Because I know, I mean, I agree with you, Gina, and I think particularly in a climate that we're in, with things being more expensive, also the debt service that's coming on board, being cognizant of that with their day-to-day. I totally hear you on that. I do think this is a tough budget year, as we're seeing even on the town side. I was also concerned, and this is a concern that I've shared both with Peggy and Seth about, you know, again, at a public meeting, presenting the fact that, we'll just special appropriate for things, down the line, and there was some sort of discussion alluding to that worries me. Again, I think if you've got one-off situations and there's a fund that we can make sure can afford it, then that's one thing. And clearly I don't want to build up the base. But I also think we need to be transparent about some of the things they know are coming down the line, so that we're mindful of the general fund and how that money is being spent, so that we don't get in a situation. I mean, now that we are assuming that,
That's
now that we're assuming that, the cost share from the educational cost share, is that what, 38,000? We weren't budgeting for that. We were putting it in the general fund before,
revenue?
correct?
308.
That's revenue, Katie.
Right,
That's
it's revenue
revenue.
from the
Revenue,
state, but we
$398.
haven't recognized it as a budget
We have
item
not.
in the past. It's been going into the general fund. But
It should
this
be
year
right.
we are, so that means the general fund will grow slower. And so I think all of that plays into things that we know are coming down the pike, and that we don't kind of put our blinders on, now.
So I don't just, listen, I'm not gonna get into what one person said or didn't say, because, you know, people can say whatever they want. And I.
That's right. Katie and I already said it.
Well, it's
So-
in a public meeting that I just happen to be watching.
No, but it doesn't mean it means anything, is my point, right? So, and I'm not gonna comment on Chair, but he did, basically, they said if it's gonna be cut, we're gonna cut it, you know, and that's how it's gonna be. And unfortunately, that shouldn't be the case. It should be, and you know, maybe Peggy should, or the Board of Selectmen should ask them to cut the 1% or come back with an effort. And I'm sure a lot of it is salaries and a few other things, but we have a decision to make, you know, if we're gonna, you know, add to it, which being a little facetious, or we're gonna cut it, and to what extent we're gonna cut, and what we're gonna do. Like I said, I'm sure they don't want their budget cut, but I agree with a lot of things that were said here, between Gene and Katie and everyone else. So I think we just gotta decide what we wanna do, and then we'll go from there. And the one-offs, I'm not buying. The band uniforms, I think we all talked about helping. I do.
Yeah, provided they better plan for that,
Yeah, I agree.
which it sounds like we're doing by this
But
fund.
they can't, that's what I was trying to say before, there is no, like, the town can
Yeah.
put in 10,000 a year for 10 years, and the money's in there, the Board of Ed can't. No, that's the difference. So
Unless
it's-
they ask the town to create another non-lapsing fund for Banyan.
Right. So I
Or
think that's
you
what,
have the fund that you were talking about, right?
That's for capital.
that's for Cal.
The band uniforms
That's why I
are not-
said, there's some things here, the
No.
band uniforms never bothered me at all, where they said special appropriate. I've been clear, I don't want it in the operating budget, speaking for myself,
I agree.
all right? So, and they don't have a mechanism or a vehicle to save
So what
for
we
it every
really get
year.
for 10 years.
Right? So every 10 years, somebody may be doing the same thing. In this case, it may be ARPA, but the rest is gonna be up to us on what we're gonna do. And they should have come back with some suggestions. I mean, we met last year, the same thing. We need a little bit more. We met and they came back with, you know, some cuts, which they do. Now, it's on us. Just leave it at that.
So it's
Stacy, what's 1% of their budget?
600,000.
Less the debt, less the payroll benefits.
So less payroll, but
So if
Yeah.
I take the payroll and benefits out and take the debt out,
we gotta take the debt off.
it's
Right.
about 240,000. 1% of that.
I
Without
mean, I think
salary,
that's
without-
fair. I think that's what the town did,
disagree.
and I think 240 is inappropriate. We're not penalizing them for debt. We're not penalizing them for payroll. Those are contractual obligations. But to me, 1% is the 240, then ask for 240.
I don't disagree.
I would agree with that as well, too. Just in
It's
this
a fair number, that you have to back up they said that the health benefits, payroll, and then, you know, the debt service. So. All right, let's continue along the line, and again, these aren't motions that were just discussion, so again, at some
Workshopping.
point, right, it's.
Just for the
Yeah,
new,
Matt.
one of the new guys, so what happens from here? So we talk about these things, we have some suggestions. At a future meeting, do we finalize those?
Yeah, there'll all be motions, Matt, so that's a good question for the newer, I know Bob's a newer member too, and John. So right now we're having a discussion, we can make an informal motion to do it, what we'd like to do is at the end, we'll have like, say 10 things, whatever they are. 9 to cut X, 1 to add revenue in, whatever it is, and we'll go through them, and then I'm trying to get a gauge now, are we way off mark? And at that meeting, we'll do the same thing, a motion, the second discussion, and then, yay or nay for each one of them. For the expense side and the revenue side. But I just right now trying to get everybody to get a gauge on expenses where we are, and the next meeting the revenue, and then maybe the third meeting we start to take action, which
We have 3.
we have three.
We have 3, 2 more after this.
Right, so the third meeting we can take, unless there's something. Roll in, yeah,
Is this an appropriate time to talk about the fund balance?
is it an expense?
It's not.
Go ahead, you want to go into one?
No, I just because we're talking about things that will probably be appropriations down the road that we'll have to. And because now we won't have that additional education cost share grant that comes in, right? That,
Well, it's coming in, it's budgeting.
We didn't budget for, we didn't count on it every year, but we've been getting it. every
Right.
year. Now we're going to budget.
so
for it.
because it hasn't been budgeted for, I assume it goes in a general fund, right?
It was seen as a windfall.
So that's right, $300,000 every year that's gone, well, not every year, it's only been since what, 2011 that we lost that or something, I remember I was on the board, Jean was chair and I said,
It went down a lot. It used to
2008.
be-
well, we thought we were gonna have
Five.
nothing.
Yeah,
We were hearing
2010 when it went down a lot.
it was
It
later
went
than
down
that.
later than that, because I was on the.
It's about
board.
It was over $1 million that we got
It
at
was like
one point,
1.5 and 1.
$2 million. Not
yeah.
that long
And
ago.
that's.
Good, I want, is there a question in there somewhere?
Well, the question is,
No.
Go ahead. So
Sorry.
my question is, again, because, if you look at, we appropriated over $6 million last year, right? Am I writing that right? Yes.
We did some big items.
We did.
The CIP.
So
Yep.
my concern is we do have a very healthy fund balance, which is lovely and has granted us the ability that and ARPA to do some of these things. I just worry that without a better process, that could be in jeopardy. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think you're basically worried that,
Can you say it in a
Yeah.
financy way?
basically, you're worried we're gonna spend more of the fund balance that we bring in, and eventually it's gonna be
Thank you.
no problem. And
Because honestly, when you look at, what they request us to have, which is 10%, right? That's what our regulation is, but if the state would regulate even more than that, then that brings the fund balance down to, say, $6 million. Well, we spent more than that in appropriations last year.
Last year was a unique year.
Okay. That's
That is
helpful to
not
hear.
the average. I do
I
have.
just feel like we appropriate everything.
That included pension
Yeah,
for $1
right,
million and it included the
CIP.
MIP plan for $3.5 million. The $3.5 million also was a result of selling Island Avenue the year before. So it's like a timing thing, but it went into fund balance the year before.
2 million.
And then we appropriated it into capital, which is part of the MIP plan. So last year is a little unique. I do have history and I could send it to you all, looking at the year over year with the fund balances, what the special appropriations are, so you can see, but that was unique.
Yeah, when I asked
That's helpful
Stacy,
to
just so
know.
you know, is the revenue that we pull off our general fund, what is it every year? Because to me, if we're spending the revenue, that's reoccurring.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And I understand, I'm sorry.
But-
I agree with Katie's concern, and to kind of go further, we're talking about using 750,000 to offset the mill rate increase. That, it kind of artificially says we're really increasing taxes by 2%. We're really
So-
increasing, if this plan were to go forward, it's 2% plus the 750,000. So I think we have to be cognizant of that, and
So
I agree.
I want to just echo what Katie and John are saying. Painfully, the Board of Finance years ago took us off the relying of that undesignated fund balance to offset the mill rate. And we got it down do we go to zero, Stace?
We did.
We got to zero. And, you know, everyone, and I think to John's point, everyone has to be clear, we are artificially inflating the budget. And we, you know, yes, we look at, and Stacy has the history, I'm comfortable right now doing it. I think it's bad practice to rely on that money moving forward, because that money also helps us during hurricanes. It also, before we get reimbursed, it helps us with other emergencies. And
Yeah.
if our bond rating is up because we have a healthy fund balance, those are things we need to consider. And I'm not saying we shouldn't offset it. I believe taxpayers deserve, it's their money. We should be using it for the current taxpayers. But I just wanted, to John's point, I think we need to be very clear that the increase to the budget minus the undesignated fund balance offset is really high. And people have to be aware. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be aware that the budget is high.
Do you think that what is proposed to put in to offset the mill rate is enough, or would you do more?
I mean, you're talking about somebody that always wanted to get off of using it, so.
I know. I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm gonna jump in here too, because to me, I want to see what the revenue is. Because if the revenue is reoccurring, right, that's the difference, and you use a percentage of it. So I agree with you, John. I mean, we've talked about it 100 times, and to me, I know some people, to me, the better the fund balance is, the more the revenue is, the more we can use every year, because you're using the revenue off the fund balance. And I'm probably in the minority when I say that, because most people, well, we'll give it back to taxpayers. I get that, but if we have X amount of dollars and that's generating 5% a year, we can generate 1, 2, 2.5 million every year. It eats up a lot of your natural increases offset. But that's, so I think that to answer your question, if you're using enough or not, you know, I asked Stacy, and I think the next meeting you'll have the revenue projections. Let's see what the revenue is off our fund balance.
Okay.
Let's see what it is. If it's 500,000, it's one thing. If it's
Tangent, but also related, but instead of doing that and artificially bringing down the mill rate, also with our pensions.
Mm.
You know, using it there.
No more.
You know, because I mean, that's another service. I mean, that's something that's important, that's gonna benefit us.
right now, that could change the operating budget going forward in a positive way. And that's why we put $1 million, some $1.2 million. I wish it was $1 million in the fire sale, the auction at Fillmore at that time.
The auction.
We did $1.2 million, but also cognizant, again, I'm going back to me, just me. I like that help. I do.
So do I.
So how do you get off of using?
You lower your expense.
It's
Funding.
It's
Yeah, less-
painful.
Yeah.
Less spending, or somehow your grant list grows. And this is, the other thing to keep in mind is a reevaluation year. Not everybody got evaluation the same. So it's another, to Jane's point, to everyone's point here, to me, I might be a little more, you know, okay, maybe use a little more than we probably do in the past, because it's hard, because not every house or business went up 50%. Someone, you know, someone 20, someone 60. It's a different. I mean, we gotta look at all of it, is all I'm saying.
Good point.
Yeah, and the problem is when you use fund balance to offset, you're behind before you even start.
Right. You're in the hole.
Building up the base budget.
And you're gonna whack so much more.
Unless you continue to use it.
Out of that
You're gonna get-
750, how much of that is just going to be padded in to be budget for next, where we start next year?
You're already behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're behind before you.
You know, and I think to the point we were saying about how you get off of it, Katie, it's a collaborative effort. It's the town and the Board of Ed knowing that we're trying to come off of it. It's in joint leadership. People sit down and say, what can you do to get us off that? I don't think we're at that point right now. But I do think it's something that we should be cognizant of in our 5-year fiscal plan, that, you know, and it's a little bit at a time. It's not just in 1 year you drop it. You know, I think Stace, we went from 750 to like,
To 500 for a couple of years, yeah.
And then we slowly went down to 0. So you can't hurt the taxpayers up front, but I think collaboratively working together and making good decisions for the town, for the taxpayers, is a way in which we could do that. But everybody has to come to the table and everybody has to agree on
Give
it.
a little, yeah.
The Board of Ed has to be there too. It's the biggest stuff.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Are we off another?
I think we're-
expense?
yeah,
Okay, can you, so for the record, I support our library. But can you help me understand why their budget is almost $1.5 million compared to other departments? Like, why is it?
We've always supported over 80%.
And when they built the new library, certain things were gonna change in a positive effect, and certain things they grew too, so.
And I
If
will,
Your question is, why do we support 80% or so, or is your question why?
It's just so high for
so as their liaison, I will tell you that they did reduce it from their original ask. And they took some things off the table. So that was helpful. They have really been struggling to reduce things. And
That's what happens, that's what happens.
Yeah.
I always say the hardest thing to do is take something out of the budget.
Well, looking back to when they were rebuilding the library, we ended up cutting a lot of positions at that time. And now they're having to refill those positions.
COVID is a boom, yeah.
Hmm.
Their usership is like through the roof. In terms of people going in there, which is a great thing. I mean, that's what I wanted.
I guess, again, being new, and I apologize if I'm sticking it out, but are there revenue opportunities?
They have a great, I mean,
They do, they have.
they do a
donations.
lot of fundraising, they have a lot of.
Yeah. And that's the biggest piece of revenue.
And they raise all year long.
I was gonna say, it seems like.
Their
every
development
2
is-
months There seems like there's either.
It's hard raising money all the time. You raise 200,000 on $1.5 million, doesn't sound like a
Raffle
lot, but
tickets,
you know,
the mini golf.
but to me, it's, we're one town, and go back to Gene's point with the Board of Ed, but also the library, we're one town, so the more we can combine our services, I think it's better off. You're right, fund 80% of the building, or the operation, so
The operations, it's been about 80%.
80% of the operation. Yeah.
Historically, up to 82.
Even before the members.
Even
It hasn't
before.
really increased.
Yeah, in many towns, the library is a department.
Right,
Within
that's
the
my,
town.
that's my point.
You know, they're a separate not-for-profit, so we do get a little bit of a break, but we do pretty much pay their operations.
And it was higher than 80%, it was 81% this year.
I think that's what they were asking for. That's with the 160. That's with the 160%. I'm not sure which percent it is. But it's going up over last year.
Yeah, when they came to us, they also had the, remember they had the, landscape thing in there and they took that out. They took a few things out from when they presented to us.
Yeah, we're looking to help them a little bit more with town staff.
Yeah.
Just slight different from it. Just to go back to on the expense side, I expect everybody to go back and look through this again, and then the next meeting we'll go through the expenses for a minute. But then go for mainly on the revenue, maybe at the end of that, we can make some motions depending on how much time we have. Was there anything specifically in this budget that someone wants to talk about, go through? Like I said, I mentioned the CRNE, I'm more than okay with that. I think 50 might be low, but I'm okay with that. I do agree with the pension side. I mean, depending on how we spend, the revenue and the fund balance, see what we can help offset. Even though I'm sure a few years ago, you're probably around 1% on the fund balance with STIP, but now it's probably 5%, and the pension probably averages 6 or 7 over time. But I'm gonna go around. Bob, you have anything you want to? Gene, I'm gonna save you for last, because I know you have something.
I'm good.
You're good? Get it, Gene,
I made all my points.
John,
Yeah, I'm looking for more from the Board of Ed, so I mean, I'll say that. Yeah, just applying that 1% would be more than the 200,000. So that's kind of where I am right now.
okay, like I said, everyone's gonna go back and look at this
Yeah.
and come up with any suggestions.
Yeah.
This is just beginning, man.
I'm in agreement. I think with the Board of Ed, everyone else has been asked to come to the table. I think that's totally reasonable. It follows the precedent we're setting with everybody else. So. I'm in agreement.
Katie, anything but?
Solar speed sites? No, I'm good. I think you've heard enough from me.
No, not at all.
The only thing that I'm concerned about with the 1%, because I like the idea of it and I like it has a good logic behind it, is their response being when you asked for 1%, but you only got 0.25%. So why are you looking for more than that from us? So I think we just have to think of other ways as well.
So you just have a town.
Yeah. When
Like
they
some
ask for
departments
1%,
did one, some didn't.
yeah, it's like, well, we'll come back with 0.25% of cuts. And I just have one final question on is it the ECS?
Yes.
So I remember back when we used to get 1.4 million, and I think that was even in 2016, maybe 2017. And then it just got chopped. I think it was 2 years in a row. It just got chopped out. What I get concerned about in putting that into the budget is what if we don't get it? I would rather be on the cautious side than being $350,000 short.
So and I don't disagree, here's my point on that, ECS money, I know at one point was chopped, and I think to me, not recognize the revenue is also saying that we knew it was coming in for years, we got it every year, and then we didn't recognize the revenue, so we're back to the fund balance artificially growing or something else. So I have an issue, but it's not 3 million, we've been 385,000 on a 90-something million dollar budget, so I'm okay if it doesn't come in, and then, you're right, but I think to recognize the 385 that's been coming in pretty much every year
Yeah.
is fine. If you want to lower a little bit, that's fine, but they give you the figure, this is what they're giving.
Yeah, so I have the history. In 15-16, we were getting 1.5 million. 16-17, it went down to 444. So that was the year that we were all shocked. And then it went to 369, 402, 419, 424, 439, 404. So since it dropped, we have gotten in over 400,000 for 8 years. So we did wean ourselves off it because of that scare that year.
Yeah.
But I think now we're safe that we have been getting this 400,000 in regularly, and we did get an estimate from CCM based on what's going on, and that is 395 of what they're stating. So I agree, I was very hesitant, but looking at the history, we have gotten it was consistent.
And
Thank you for the history.
Did pilot,
and a little taxes and that,
so we're still not realizing that.
Pilot, we are, we do
we
count
should-
on
we should-
pilot. Should be in your budget.
we're gonna go through the revenue line item.
Yeah,
next time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Defense, Stacy, I asked her to plan about the defense, and then the next time revenue.
Yep.
I can also answer fund balance history
Yeah, I think,
next time.
yeah, I think we can still go through all that. Do you want to bring up anything, Chris, in this case?
Just bring up fund balance. We weaned ourselves off to 1920, we were at 0.
I remember being on the board of finance with zero. I've been on, since 1919. And I go back to, whatever else, I'm gonna talk to Chief Drum about that and ask him, what does that mean for fiscal 26 and 27? You're gonna be here every year asking for more officers, and I'll let you know what it says. We now know. Anything else? So we don't adjourn because this is continuous, so we'll just,
Looks like Good Friday now.
keep going. The next,
Wednesday, right?
Next Wednesday, yeah.
Wednesday at 6 o'clock, I believe. What were we at stake?
Feel better,
I don't
Jean.
know, Kristen, what room are we at?
And I hope Oliver
We'll
feels
let you
better,
know.
Bob.
Yeah.
The room is pending.
Okay.
We will send out an email.
So 6
so that-
o'clock.
Come to my house. Just
6
for your
o'clock.
minutes.
on-